You have been conditioned to believe that destruction announces itself. That is your first error. Human civilization has spent 10,000 years equating scale with spectacle. The larger the death, the louder the sound. The bigger the structure, the more catastrophic the collapse. You built this assumption into your mythology, into your science, into the instruments you point at the sky and call telescopes. You built it into the very language you use to describe cosmic events. The word explosion, the word burst, the word flash. Every term you have invented for stellar death is a term built around the assumption of noise, around the assumption that mass, when it surrenders, screams. The universe does not confirm this assumption. It has never confirmed this assumption. You simply ignored the evidence to the contrary. A supernova is not a sign of power. Understand this precisely. A supernova is a sign of failure. It is the universe's version of a structural collapse that partially holds. It is a star that reached its terminal mass threshold and still, after all that pressure, after all that gravity, managed to produce a shockwave, managed to produce an outward-moving wall of plasma and radiation and expelled stellar material that crossed light years and eventually reached your instruments. A supernova is spectacular. It is also, clinically speaking, a compromise. It means the star fought. It means some portion of the star's energy escaped. It means the collapse was imperfect. True, absolute gravitational dominance does not produce a supernova. True, absolute gravitational dominance produces nothing. No light, no GeV-burst, no neutrino pulse detectable from neighboring systems, no expanding shell of ionized gas glowing in false color images on university websites. True, absolute collapse produces a silence so complete that your instruments register it as an absence, as a void, as a star that was present in last Tuesday's data and is simply not present in this Tuesday's data. You have been looking for the flash. The flash is the consolation prize. The flash means gravity blinked. When gravity does not blink, there is no consolation. There is only the data set and the empty coordinate where the object used to be, and the clinical, indifferent conclusion that the universe executed a deletion with no announcement, no ceremony, and no detectable output whatsoever. That is what this episode is about. Not spectacle, silence. Not the death of a star the way your models predicted it. The death of a star the way physics demanded it, when the numbers finally became large enough that no alternative was physically permitted. Adjust your assumptions accordingly. We are going to examine a crime scene with no body, no weapon, and no sound. We are going to examine what it looks like when the universe removes something from the record entirely. We are going to examine a direct collapse black hole. The star was cataloged. That is where this case begins. Not with a bang, not with a discovery, but with a routine data entry in an astronomical survey that noted the existence of a luminous blue variable hypergiant approximately 75 million light-years from Earth in the galaxy known as PHL 293b. The star was not unusual by hypergiant standards. It was massive, somewhere between 85 and 100 solar masses at its peak, and it was luminous, burning at an intensity roughly 2.5 million times the solar output of our own sun. It had been cataloged, observed, monitored, and tracked. It appeared in repeated photometric surveys. It was, by all established metrics, a confirmed stellar object occupying a confirmed coordinate in a confirmed galaxy. And then, it was not. Between 2011 and 2019, the star disappeared from observational records. Not in the way a star disappears behind a dust cloud, not in the way an object becomes temporarily undetectable due to atmospheric interference or instrument malfunction. It disappeared in the cleanest, most absolute sense of the word.
The coordinate was revisited. The instruments were calibrated. The survey data was cross-referenced. The star was gone. No supernova had been recorded for that coordinate. No gamma-ray burst flagged in the archival data for that time window. No expanding nebula was forming at the last known position. No pulsar remnant was spinning out detectable radio waves from that location. No X-ray source had ignited to mark the birth of a neutron star or a traditionally formed stellar mass black hole. The sky in that precise location was optically clear, radiatively inert, and entirely, perfectly empty. This is the May anomaly as it has entered the literature. The star, referred to in subsequent papers by the research team that documented it, had not died in a way that left any observable trace. It had not concluded its stellar life cycle in any manner consistent with established supernova models, pair instability explosion models, or hypernova frameworks. It had simply ceased to exist as a detectable optical source. The universe deleted it. That is not a metaphor. That is the operational description. The object was present, then a period of time elapsed, then the object was absent. No transitional state was recorded. No decay curve was documented. No rising X-ray luminosity preceded the disappearance in the way that fallback accretion events are predicted to behave. Nothing. A macroscopic nuclear engine, 100 times the mass of our Sun, processing millions of tons of hydrogen into helium, into carbon, into oxygen, into silicon every second, generating a luminosity output visible from 75 million light-years from Earth, vanished from observational reality without producing a single photon of transitional emission that any telescope on Earth or in orbit was able to detect. You need to sit with that number, 75 million light-years. The light reaching your instruments from that location left its source before your genus existed, before your species existed, before your entire primate lineage diverged from the common ancestor. The star you were looking for burned for millions of years, fused its way through the entire nuclear sequence, achieved a mass beyond which physics allows no survival, and then collapsed. And the collapse produced absolutely nothing that could cross that 75 million light-year gulf and tell you it had happened. The deletion was not just silent, it was silent across cosmological distance and cosmological time. That is the anomaly. Now we examine the mechanism.
A star exists because of a balance. Strip away the mythology, the imagery, the romanticized descriptions, and what you are left with is an equilibrium between two forces that have no interest in each other and no mutual negotiation. Gravity pulls inward. Radiation pressure pushes outward. The star exists in the interval between those two forces. It is not alive. It is not burning in any emotional sense. It is a temporary physical compromise that the universe tolerates for as long as the nuclear fuel supply persists. That is the complete story of every star ever formed. Gravity versus fuel. Collapse versus detonation. The lifespan of a star is simply the duration of that argument. For low-mass stars, the argument ends slowly. The fuel depletes, fusion rates drop, radiation pressure falls. Gravity takes over incrementally, compressing the stellar core over thousands of years into a white dwarf. The mass is insufficient to push further. The electron degeneracy pressure of the compressed matter holds. The star cools over billions of years into an inert cinder, eventually a black dwarf, cold and invisible but structurally intact. For intermediate stars, the argument ends with more drama. Carbon fusion ignites briefly. The outer layers expand into a red giant. The core eventually collapses past white dwarf density. If the mass is sufficient, electron degeneracy fails, and neutron degeneracy pressure takes over. A neutron star forms. The infalling outer layers bounce off this sudden rigid surface and propagate outward as a supernova shockwave. The star dies in the way you expect. It makes noise. It makes light.
It produces an expanding nebula visible across millions of light years. It is, from an observational standpoint, cooperative. For the most massive stars, the hypergiants, the luminous blue variables, the objects approaching and exceeding 100 solar masses, the argument ends differently. Because the mass is not just large, the mass is so large that the rules change. Here is the critical number, the Schwarzschild radius. For any given mass, there exists a radius below which the gravitational field becomes so intense that not even light can escape. This is not a hypothesis. This is a geometric consequence of general relativity, verified to extraordinary precision across 80 years of observational astronomy. The Schwarzschild radius for a mass m scales linearly with m. For our Sun, it is approximately 3 kilometers. For an object 100 times the mass of our Sun, it is approximately 300 kilometers. The stellar core of a 100 solar mass star at the end of its life is producing iron in its innermost layer. Iron does not fuse. It absorbs energy rather than releasing it. When the iron core reaches approximately 1.4 solar masses, the Chandrasekhar limit, electron degeneracy fails. The core, which had been held rigid by the quantum mechanical resistance of electrons to occupying the same energy state, abruptly loses that support structure. Electrons are forced into protons. Protons become neutrons. The core collapses. For intermediate mass stars, this collapse is arrested by neutron degeneracy pressure at a radius of roughly 10 to 20 kilometers. The bounce occurs. The supernova propagates.
For a hypergiant, the core mass at collapse is not 1.4 solar masses. It is substantially larger. The infalling material is not just the iron core. It is the iron core plus the silicon shell, plus the oxygen shell, plus layers of heavier elements that have accumulated over millions of years of sequential fusion burning. The total mass available to fall inward in a single coherent event is not a fraction of a solar mass. It is several solar masses, accreting onto the collapsing core at a fraction of the speed of light. Neutron degeneracy pressure has a limit. That limit is the Tolman-Oppenheimer-Volkov limit, somewhere between 2 and 3 solar masses. When the infalling mass surpasses this threshold before the outward bounce can propagate, neutron degeneracy fails. The collapse does not arrest. There is no bounce. There is no shockwave. There is no mechanism by which the outer stellar material is ejected. The core does not stop at neutron star density. It continues collapsing. Within a frame time measured not in seconds, not in milliseconds, but in fractions of milliseconds. Specific estimates place the direct collapse timescale for the entire core at somewhere between 0.5 and 2 milliseconds. The infalling mass crosses the Schwarzschild radius. The event horizon forms. Not gradually, not incrementally. It forms instantaneously across the entire collapse volume the moment the density and radius relationship satisfies the Schwarzschild condition. One moment, there is no event horizon. A fraction of a millisecond later, there is one, and it is already growing as the remaining stellar mass falls inward through it. From outside this event horizon, no information escapes. No light, no radiation, no gravitational wave signature strong enough to be detected from 75 million light-years. No neutrino burst, because the neutrino opacity of the collapsing core at these densities traps even weakly interacting particles for long enough that the horizon forms before they can escape in significant numbers. The collapse is not just fast, it is faster than the mechanisms by which a star would announce its own death. It is faster than its own obituary can be written and transmitted. That is the physics of deletion. The mass was too large, the core too heavy, the collapse too total for any countering force to intervene. Gravity did not win a battle. There was no battle. There was only a threshold, and the star exceeded it,
and physics executed the inevitable outcome with the cold efficiency of a mathematical proof.
The star tried to explode. This detail must not be omitted because it is the most psychologically significant component of the direct collapse event. The photons were generated. The nuclear reactions in the outer shells of the star, triggered by the pressure spike of the core's implosion, produced genuine radiative energy output in the moments following the initial collapse. The silicon shell, the oxygen shell, the outer layers of partially fused material, they responded to the gravitational pressure wave from the collapsing core with a burst of energetic photon production. This was not a suppressed explosion. This was a real explosion, producing real photons, generating real outward-moving energy. The photons moved outward at the speed of light, the only speed at which photons are capable of moving. But the event horizon was already there. The event horizon did not form after the photons. The event horizon formed in the core collapse, and the core collapse reached the Schwarzschild threshold before the photon burst from the outer shells could propagate outward far enough to escape the forming event horizon's gravitational capture radius. The photons moved at c. The gravitational boundary expanded faster than c, not through space, but as a geometric property of space-time itself curving past the point of no return. A photon moving outward at the speed of light inside a region of space-time where the curvature is sufficient to define an event horizon does not escape. It cannot escape. This is not a statistical outcome. It is not a matter of the photon almost making it. Space-time inside the event horizon is curved in a direction that has no outward component. The photon moves forward in time, and forward in time inside the event horizon means forward toward the singularity. There is no trajectory available to a photon inside the event horizon that leads outside it. The explosion happened, the energy was real, the photons existed, and they were swallowed before they could travel 1 millimeter beyond the collapsing boundary. Think about what this means observationally. You were looking at a coordinate in the sky. The star is there. The photons from its last moments of nuclear burning are traveling toward you at the speed of light across 75 million light-years. Those photons will reach you. They will hit your instruments. They will register as the star's final luminosity reading, indistinguishable from any other night's data. And then, the next night's data will simply show nothing. There is no transitional brightness curve. There is no dimming period. There is no rising X-ray emission from fallback accretion that gives you days or weeks of warning. The star is present. The collapse occurs. The explosion is trapped. The data stream from that coordinate terminates. The star died screaming. Every physical mechanism that would normally produce a detectable signal fired correctly and in sequence. The pressure wave hit the outer shells. The photons were produced. The energy existed, but the acoustics of that death, to use a deliberately inappropriate metaphor, were all inside the event horizon before the sound wave reached the door. You cannot hear it, not because it did not happen, because the room it happened in sealed itself before the sound wave reached the door. This is the horror of the direct collapse event, stated in clinical terms. The star's death cry was physically, mathematically, and permanently contained within the object that caused its death. The black hole ate the supernova before the supernova could exist as an observable phenomenon. The universe allowed this. The universe does not have an opinion about it, neither do I. But you should spend a moment with the specific image of energy existing and being extinguished before it can propagate. You should spend a moment with the concept of a scream that is generated at full volume and contained so completely that it registers as absolute silence to any observer positioned outside the containing boundary. That is what happened to that star. That is what the May anomaly represents in physical terms, an executed deletion, a death that generated its own evidence and then immediately sequestered all of it beyond any observational access for the remainder of the universe's functional lifespan. What occupies the coordinate now is a black hole. This requires no dramatic description because the description is already maximally stark in its precise clinical form. A region of spacetime with a mass between 85 and 100 solar masses compressed within a Schwarzschild radius of approximately 250 to 300 kilometers. A perfectly spherical event horizon. Spherical because the collapse, in the absence of significant rotation torque, produces a Schwarzschild black hole rather than a Kerr black hole, though realistic stellar rotation will produce some spin and some deviation toward the Kerr metric. An object of extraordinary gravitational influence, capable of warping the light paths of any nearby stars or gas clouds, capable of accreting material from its local environment and producing X-ray emission from the accretion disk if sufficient material is present. But there is no accretion disk. The star was isolated. There is no companion object feeding mass into the gravitational well. There is no dense gas cloud in the immediate vicinity being drawn inward and heated to X-ray emitting temperatures. There is only the black hole, sitting silently in the exact spatial coordinate it is always occupied, because nothing moved it, because it did not explode, because there was no momentum imparted to the remnant object by an asymmetric supernova kick. This is the forensic aftermath, a perfectly spherical mathematical void, a fresh black hole with no accretion disk, no associated nebula, no pulsar spin down, no detectable electromagnetic output of any kind. It is radiatively inert, gravitationally stable, and completely, permanently invisible to any instrument that detects electromagnetic radiation. It is 75 million light-years away, and it is, for all practical purposes, not there. Not because it lacks mass. It has 100 solar masses of compressed space-time curvature sitting at that coordinate. It is not there because our entire paradigm of astronomical observation is built on detecting electromagnetic radiation, and this object emits none. There is no glowing debris cloud expanding outward from the collapse point, carrying the heavier elements synthesized during the star's lifetime out into the interstellar medium. A standard core collapse supernova would eject roughly half the star's mass back into the galaxy, seeding the surrounding gas with carbon, oxygen, silicon, iron, the building blocks of planets, of chemistry, of biology. This collapse ejected nothing. Whatever heavy elements the star synthesized over its multi-million-year lifespan are now inside the event horizon. They are, for all astronomical purposes, deleted from the observable universe. The periodic table was changed, not by addition, by subtraction, by sequestration. A mass of heavy elements that might otherwise have enriched the interstellar medium and eventually, over billions of years, found their way into the formation of new stellar systems, new planets, new chemically complex environments, was instead removed from observable reality in a fraction of a millisecond and placed permanently beyond the event horizon of a silent, invisible, undetectable grave. The universe did not mark the spot. There is no event marker. There is no tombstone. There is no expanding shell of glowing gas that will persist for 10,000 years and allow future observers to look at the sky and say, "Something died here." The coordinates are clean. The surrounding space is clear. The star is simply absent, and the thing that replaced it is invisible, and the universe has moved on with total indifference. Now scale this. The observable universe contains an estimated 2 trillion galaxies. Each galaxy contains, on average, hundreds of billions of stars. The total stellar population of the observable universe is a number that requires scientific notation to represent, something on the order of 10 to the 24th power, 1 septillion stars. And within that population, the most massive stars, those above approximately 25 to 40 solar masses, are candidates for direct collapse. The exact mass threshold depends on metallicity, rotation rate, and internal mass distribution, but the population of stars massive enough to potentially undergo direct collapse is not small. It is an enormous number of objects distributed across the entire visible cosmos. How many of them are disappearing right now?
This question does not have an answer. That is the relevant data point. It does not have an answer because the only way we detect stellar death in distant galaxies is by detecting the electromagnetic output of that death: supernovae, gamma-ray bursts, X-ray transients, optical transients. Every detection method we have is predicated on the dying star producing some form of detectable radiation that can cross cosmological distances and reach our instruments. Direct collapse black hole formation produces none of these outputs at detectable levels. The event horizon traps the photons. The collapse produces no sustained X-ray source. The neutrino burst is below detection threshold for extragalactic events. Gravitational wave detectors at current sensitivity levels cannot resolve a stellar mass collapse event at 75 million light-years. The event is, from the standpoint of our observational infrastructure, categorically undetectable. We are mapping the universe using a detection paradigm that is, by definition, blind to the most massive, most immediate gravitational collapse events occurring within it. We are charting the cosmos using only the light it chooses to emit, in a regime where the most extreme objects emit nothing. We are navigating by the fires we can see, with no information about the voids that have formed in the darkness between them. The statistical implication is not subtle. If direct collapse events are occurring at the rate that population models of massive stars suggest they should be, and there is no physical reason they should not be, then the number of black holes forming silently and invisibly in the observable universe at any given moment is not small. It is, depending on the direct collapse fraction of the total black hole formation rate, potentially the majority of all black hole formation events currently occurring. The universe may be producing black holes faster than it is producing supernovae, and we know about every supernova because they announce themselves. We know about essentially none of the direct collapse events because they do not. The graveyard is growing. We do not have a map of it. We do not have a methodology for mapping it. We do not have instruments that can detect the events that populate it. You are operating in a region of space that contains an unknown number of recently formed black holes at unknown coordinates. Some of them formed in the last century. Some formed while your telescopes were pointed at them, on nights when you recorded a star's luminosity and filed it in a database and moved on. The absence in the next year's survey data was noted, possibly attributed to instrument artifact, possibly flagged as anomalous and added to a list of objects requiring follow-up observation. The follow-up observation confirms the absence. The star is gone. The case is filed under direct collapse candidate, and the black hole sits silently at the noted coordinate, emitting nothing, receiving all. This is the unseen epidemic, not a metaphor, a quantitative observational blind spot in our entire cosmological model, produced by the physics of the most massive objects in the universe deleting themselves without output. We are not seeing the universe clearly. We are seeing the fraction of the universe that is willing to be seen. And the most massive, most gravitationally significant fraction is systematically invisible.
This is a preview. The collapse of that hypergiant is not an isolated anomaly at the extreme end of the stellar mass distribution. It is a demonstration of a process, a preview of the terminal condition of the observable universe. Because the universe's final state is not heat death, not the slow, imperceptible cooling of all matter to thermal equilibrium. And it is not a big crunch, the romantic catastrophe of universal gravitational reconvergence in a final symmetric collapse. The universe's final state is darkness. Incremental, local, permanent darkness, one object at a time. The most massive stars die first. They have already been dying since the universe was a few 100 million years old. The stellar population you observe today is biased toward lower mass, longer-lived stars because the hypergiants burn through their fuel in millions of years, while red dwarfs will persist for trillions. The hypergiants are dying now, and some of them are dying silently,
and the black holes they leave behind are the first permanent fixtures in the universe's terminal landscape. After the hypergiants, the intermediate mass stars. Their deaths produce neutron stars and pulsars, which radiate their rotational energy away over millions of years and go dark. They produce white dwarfs, which cool over billions of years into black dwarfs. These remnants are not luminous. They are not optically detectable at cosmological distances. They are the universe's long-term storage medium for mass that has finished its luminous phase and has been downgraded to dark remnant status. After the intermediate mass stars, the low-mass stars, the red dwarfs. They will persist for timescales that are difficult to contextualize, 10 to the 13th years, 100 times the current age of the universe. But they will also eventually exhaust their fuel. They will also eventually collapse. Their remnants will also eventually cool to darkness. And at some point in the far future, at a timescale that makes the current age of the universe look like a rounding error, the last star will exhaust its fuel. The last nuclear fusion reaction will terminate. The last photon from that reaction will propagate outward, will travel for potentially billions of years through an increasingly dark and empty universe, and will eventually redshift beyond any detection threshold and effectively cease to exist as a carrier of information. The universe began with a flash. It will end with a silence identical to the one that ended that hypergiant. That is the long-term prognosis. That is the terminal diagnosis of observable reality.
Go outside tonight. Look up. The sky you see is not a current map. Understand this precisely. The light entering your retina right now departed its source at some point in the past. Years ago for the nearest stars, thousands of years ago for stars visible to the naked eye from the outer reaches of the Milky Way, millions of years ago for the faint smudges of light that are the nearest galaxies. The night sky is an archaeological record, a map of what existed, not what exists. A time-delayed photograph of a universe that has continued to change in every direction you can point, while the light from those changes travels toward you at the only speed available to it. Some of the stars you are looking at are already gone. Not metaphorically, not poetically, physically, observationally, verifiably gone in the sense that if you had an instrument capable of detecting their present-day condition rather than their historical light output, you would find only the remnant, the dark object, the void. Some of them went as supernovae, and the expanding shells of that death are already thousands of light years across and still propagating outward while the light from the explosion itself is still in transit toward you. Some of them went as direct collapse events, silently, without output, without even the consolation of a death flash that will eventually reach you and register as a last brightness spike before the data stream terminates. The light from those direct collapse events is not in transit. There is no last flash coming. There is no final data point that will allow you to pinpoint the moment of termination on your photometric charts. The stars that died by direct collapse are simply absent from the next observation, and the light that was present before the collapse was not the light of a dying star. It was the light of a living star. The dying took no time, produced no light, left no trace. You are looking at ghosts. Some of them are the ghosts of objects that went spectacularly, that died in the way you expected, whose deaths are still traveling toward you in the form of expanding light echoes and glowing nebulae. And some of them are the ghosts of objects that were simply present and then were not, and whose deaths were so absolute and so contained that the only evidence of the transition is the silence that followed. This is the forensic conclusion of the May anomaly analysis. A hypergiant star, 100 solar masses, luminosity 2.5 million times solar output, disappeared from observational records between 2011 and 2019. No supernova, no gamma-ray burst,
No detectable transitional emission in any band. Direct collapse to a black hole is the only physically consistent explanation. The event horizon formed in less than 2 milliseconds. The photons from the collapse were trapped before propagation. The explosion happened in the dark. The universe is not a theater. It was never designed for your observation. It does not stage its events for detectability. It does not arrange its physics to produce observable outputs for the benefit of species that developed optical instruments on a minor planet in an outer spiral arm 13.8 billion years into the universe's operational lifespan. The universe processes mass, mediates forces, and evolves its geometry according to the laws of physics, and those laws do not include a provision for observer notification. In a vacuum, no one owes you a warning.